So, yeah, welcome to the April meeting, everybody. This meeting is being live streamed. So, apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Barnes and Mayor Jim. You can delete Councillor Webber because I can see him alive and well. So that's all good. So could I have a mover, please?
Glowing. Should be glowing.
Yeah. Could I have a mover to receive those apologies, please? Thanks, Roger. Thanks, Bruce. All in favour?
Aye.
Contrary, no. That is carried. Disclosure of members' interests. Do we have any? No. Great. In that case, I'll move on to late items. And there being none, we'll go to confirmation of order of the meeting. No changes, Ken?
No, there shouldn't need to be.
Okay, great. So could I have a mover for the order, please? Thanks, Lou and Graham. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. That is carried. Confirmation of minutes. We've got some background noise from somewhere. Can't see where. Oh, Jim is here. Are you going to be with us, Jim? We've taken your apology.
I'm here for the minute. I'm just waiting for confirmation whether the meeting at the RSA is still on.
Ah.
Yeah.
So, shall I leave your apology there?
Which RSAs is that? Is that which
meeting
is that? No, there was no they cancelled that meeting.
Yeah. Okay. So
it was definitely cancelled because I was talking earlier on because we stayed online with everything.
Okay, then could you cancel my apologies, please, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, indeed. We'll remove your apology. Do we need to move and second that, Claire, or no?
I'll move that, Andrew, if we need to.
I think, yeah, if you just move and second it, that would be tidy that up.
Thanks, Philip. And a seconder would be, thanks, Bruce. All in favour? Contrary, no. Carried. Okay, so moving on to confirmation of the minutes of the 29th of March on pages 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Excuse me, Andrew?
14. Yes, Claire.
Yeah, on page 13 at the bottom there for the 8th month report.
8 months, yes.
Yeah, it's got financial accountant Nadia Milne, but I think it's Nada.
It is Nada, yeah. No I in there. And yep, so if that change could be made, that'd be great. Thank you. And 14 and 15. And the signature on page 16. So with that small change, small but important change, could I have a mover that these are a true and correct record? Thanks, Claire. Seconded by Roger. Thanks, Roger. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. That is carried. Okay, let's move on to item 6, Community Board Review. And this is going to be led by Joe. Hi, Joe.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. So the purpose of this report, it really all stems out of the representation review that we undertook last year at the meeting that you had where we had the hearings on the 12th of October. The Finance and Corporate Committee passed a resolution to direct staff to undertake a review to improve the role and functions of community boards, and prior to commencing the review, the scope and parameters of that review be agreed by the Finance and Corporate Committee. So we got the other week recently, we've had in our determination order from the Local Government Commission. So community boards will be in place for the next election. So now is a good time to kick off this review because we're quite keen to get it done this financial year. So there's a recommendation. We've kind of scoped out some very broad parameters that in terms of how it will be undertaken, looking at a independent review, just to get that kind of broader, more independent perspective on it. Also looking at ensuring that whoever does it will not only look at our existing documentation, including any reviews, the residents' perception survey, so that some of the other work that's been done generally, across the board in relation to community boards. But we were also looking at proposing some interviews with both of the boards, as well as the councillors and some of the key staff that are involved in the work that the community boards do, so to try and get kind of a broad perspective for which to make some recommendations through to council. Does anyone have any questions really in terms of what we are proposing there?
Yeah, thanks for that, Joe. Yeah, Claire's got a question, then Roger.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I'm pleased to see the reviews being kicked off now. That's great. I was surprised though that it does seem to be quite introspective, and even though it's good to see an independent person doing it, I would have expected other people interviewed might be past community board members, key members of the public who've been vocal about performance, and key stakeholders like iwi and the Chamber of Commerce too, and like what are their expectations around a community board and how it should be functioning, and of course looking at some really exemplars too that you might know of some community boards that are performing really well, or they're getting really good feedback from the community that they're doing well. Yeah, so I was a bit surprised that the review wasn't going to extend to those kind of areas, which I thought would be pretty logical.
We're thinking if looking at seeing who we get to undertake the review, if it's someone that's in the local government sector, they'll already have the knowledge of those good exemplar practices out there, so there shouldn't be any need for them to kind of touch base and to tap into that. That should be something that they've already, we're hoping that they would have that knowledge of.
Yeah, but I mean, what about the Chamber of Commerce? I mean, they're pretty important, and I'm sure they've got a reasonable relationship with the community boards, and maybe that is something that could be enhanced with a review.
We could. Well, I mean, we could widen it. I've kind of capped it at kind of a work that I thought was kind of 25 to 30 hours. But if we wanted to undertake something that was a bit bigger than what was proposed, depending on what everyone else thought, then we could embark on that. It obviously will come at a more significant cost.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So let's hear from Roger, and then Mike, and then Susan. Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, great to see this going ahead, Joe. Really support that. But similarly, I would like to see a little bit of community input, not just those people that have been quite open in their either criticism of the current structure, but those out there in the community that possibly have had very positive experiences. So certainly expanding it to include some form of community input would be great.
I suppose just as well, bear in mind, part of the documentation we would provide them as well would be the feedback that we got on the representation review, which provided quite a good kind of cross-section of views from the community, both kind of for and against. So they would already be able to have that as really good background material.
Good point, Joe. Yeah, thanks, Roger. Mike.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. Yeah, I'd just like to support what Claire said there, that I think it does need expanding out if we actually not just sort of, well, if it's just a more genuine review that we actually want some change for good. And the other thing is, personally, I think I'd much rather take the time to get this right than fit it into the end of June. Because it works into a financial year. I think it's far more important because this review should actually make significant change for these community boards for the next quite a few election cycles. So Yeah, I think the scope needs expanding, and I think the time frame, because of that, may need extending.
Okay.
I do know that I have spoken to someone that did a review elsewhere, and theirs looked at the interviews with the community boards and councillors. It hadn't gone wider, but we can extend it out. If we would just have to look at acquiring some funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, look,
that
the other thing, the other thing there is Claire's alluded to, going to boards that are doing something slightly different. So there's obviously examples up in Thames and that sort of thing, but there's examples down the line which are sort of the far spectrum of down Wanaka Way. I mean, I know that's not what we're after, but just to get some different views from what different people are doing, and then just pick out what is going to work for Waipa. So yeah.
so that if we go to someone that's got that broad experience across the local government sector, then that'll be something that they'll already have, knowledge of. So that'll be quite a, interesting factor to be looking at when we're looking at people to do this work.
Yeah. So I mean, clearly the whoever's chosen to do the work is going to be really important. Which of course is simply a fact. Sorry, Mike, carry on.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So look, I'm just going to pick up on that word understanding. Yeah, you can have knowledge and understanding, but unless you've got an empathy for it, unless you've been in it, it's a bit different to having knowledge and understanding. There's quite a jump to really being in something to give insight to it rather than having knowledge of something. So, yeah, right, I'll finish now.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, Susan. And then Liz.
Yeah, through you, Andrew. Look, I actually wanted to echo Claire's concerns about it, and perhaps not being quite as far as broad as it could be, which seems to have been a little bit of a familiar theme thus far. But I guess my concern is that the intel we get needs to be really Waipa centric. I appreciate that there are going to be good examples around the country of really good practice, but these, from my experience, these boards vary quite significantly through a whole lot of reasons: location, size, just a lot of dynamics that vary. So I'm more concerned about getting more localized intelligence about, as has been suggested, I can't remember who suggested, but Claire suggested past members for their feedback, people who've interacted positively or negatively with the community board at a community level for their feedback. I just think it's you can only go so far with examples around the country. I think you have to look at specifically what the issues are within our region. I mean, for goodness sake, within our district alone, we have two quite different experiences. So I think we can't understate the importance of accessing that intelligence at a local level.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Liz.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Susan, as well. Hey, look, when I was reading this report, it kind of, one of the things when we look at probably meaningful consultation, I guess, is that the successful things that I've seen is probably when it's been largely driven by a member of the community board and councillor as well. And I'm wondering if we can find a councillor around this table who's happy to kind of really delve into this. I mean, I appreciate we're going to have our own session, but I just think the time is right to get with a community board member and a councillor to have a really good look at other models, but also to take and be involved in the discussions with the chambers of commerce and with people who have either had a positive or negative experience. I just think that would be really insightful. We've had some really challenging submissions in the past from members of the public around community boards. Some of their ideas were actually really good, and I'd love to bring them back. There's nothing like a good, really robust process. I think this is a great opportunity to do that. So I'd just love to see one of us sort of take that on board and like I say, drive it with a community board member, with the consultant, so that there could be a team that's just thoroughly looking at all the options and then coming back to us, obviously, to talk further.
Okay. Well, we might come back to that, Liz. Marcus.
Yep, no, I fully endorse what Liz said. I think it's really important to involve everybody, but also youth as well, like, you know, encompass everybody into it, because the community board should be more than just what they're doing now. Like, it should be, yeah, pretty important.
Okay, thanks, Marcus. Yeah, I don't disagree with the comments and suggestions. I'm just a little concerned that it might get to be bigger than Ben-Hur the way we're going, to quote one of Councillor Webber's stock phrases. Yeah, so Joe, you've heard the comments and feedback, and let's hear from you.
Well, just in terms of, we did have some money set aside in this financial year from money that hadn't been spent for a project that was about 25 to 30 hours work. If we're talking about something that's bigger, that and goes into next financial year, that's not funded. So we'd obviously have to find some money from somewhere to be able to undertake that. There won't be any spare money in an election year in the government's budgets already. So that's something to consider. I mean, I suppose bear in mind, that there are people out there that have done projects like this before. So some of that other, wider intel will be able to pick it up. And I just wonder how that would be going to work if we've got consultants doing kind of interviews with staff or members of the community, and then we've got a councillor and a community board member along as well. Then that kind of might drive, I suppose, the conversations that happen to kind of what that councillor or community board's members' particular view is, without kind of letting that person from outside come in and kind of get a more independent kind of broader perspective. It might kind of narrow down potentially some of the things that come out of those conversations, because it's coloured by some kind of existing understandings. We were kind of looking at, what with the independent, it's kind of what, we're going to be talking to board members and councillors, everyone. So it's kind of, we'll get the, but existing ideas that people have, but try and get an independent person to kind of try and pull out some new ideas and rather than, just the ones we already are aware of.
So the resolution as it stands doesn't make it clear. So who's going to appoint this person, really? It's not going to come back to the board. It's just going to be done by staff.
It was going to be just done by staff at a 25 to 30 hour week. Type of project that is within staff delegations. We also, as I said, I've got money set aside in this financial year. So I was wanting to try and get it done this financial year so I could fund it.
Yeah. Okay, so look, this is to the committee. I'll come to you in just a moment, Mike. It seems like if we're going to expand the scope, it's probably not going to happen for quite some time.
No.
And if we don't expand the scope, there's obviously concern around the table that we're not going to get what we want in terms of the review. Mm-hmm. So, okay, I'll just leave that there. Mike.
Yeah, so before I start, just to confirm, so Joe, were you looking at, when you say an external person, are you talking about a staff member, an existing staff member, just so I can clarify that?
No, a consultant, someone out there in the governance sector that works with councils and community boards across the country. So, has done this type, or someone that's local that's got experience of Waipa, someone that can kind of either know us or kind of pick up from their experience, and they probably will have, if it's someone in the governance sector, they will have done this before for other councils. So, they won't be doing this from scratch. We'll send them our material, and that they will have been there and kind of done that and have a really good idea about what is a good approach to this project. Okay,
so I think it's been round the table quite a lot. I know there's a.
Bronwyn's got her hand up.
Oh, sorry, didn't see that. Bronwyn.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. I know it has been around the table, and I suppose we're just sort of waiting on the next step from there. But just before we make that final, I suppose, comment or move, just wanted to get a broader sector view around that as well. And I suppose it is to that comment, Joe, about, you know, somebody who's worked in local government and, you know, they've been around and they know it. And I have a concern about that as well, because my concern about that is it's just the same view. And so I suppose I wanted to get a sense of an understanding of around a Māori view, a Māori perspective in there as well. Otherwise, I feel that we will just get the same of the same. So, yeah, unless there's something, I suppose, I suppose I'd just like to see that in that sector view as well. And some assurances that a Māori perspective view would be considered. Kia ora.
We could look at that in terms of scope and engagement, and who that person, because we've got them talking to the councillors and community boards, whether we kind of added in a Māori perspective as in terms of that, who they could speak to as well as part of that. Is that the type of thing you were thinking of?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'm just mindful that the council has a number of treaty settlement obligations as part of a number of the iwi entities that have settled within the Waipa district. So that's an obligation that's put on council to consider. So I would just expect that would be part of the expectation and the scope.
Yeah, and quite frankly, even without those settlement issues, it's a very valid perspective too. So, and Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, kia ora, Bronwyn, for that. Yeah, hey, just back to Liz's comment though, yeah, I mean, a lot of these community board members have only been on there less than one term, and you don't know what you don't know, which is the problem of getting some feedback, you know. They've been to limited conferences and talked to limited people because of COVID, etc. I think going back to some people who have been there in and around the fringes would be useful. And you've talked about setting up the scope, and I think that's important. And maybe if nothing else, that's where a next community board member or a councillor could be involved. And hey, I'd put my hand up for that. And in terms of extra money, I know I've got a little bit left in my PD budget. I'd happily classify that as professional development.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. I see, Susan, you've got your hand up. So we're going to make you the last contributor on this before we arrive at a decision. Susan.
Yeah, I was actually going to suggest Councillor Pettit and Councillor Gordon, Councillor Gower, if we were going to be having any interest or appetite in engaging some elected members in this process at a more detailed level. Both have sat on community boards as elected members and probably had quite different experiences given the two boards, and they both now experience elected membership status at this table. So before Mike even put his hand up, I was going to drop a minute, but I'm not sure whether there's sufficient appetite to include them at that level, but I would have thought that they were both well placed to be involved if that was the decision.
Okay, thanks for that. You know, look, having heard all of that, I kind of feel that we have a recommendation in front of us, and I feel it largely covers most of the concerns that are brought up, specifically now that I know that Joe will have taken those on board, and when whoever is appointed is briefed for this, you know, the comments that have been made around the table are going to be taken into account. So I am going to ask if there's someone who would move the current recommendation.
I'm happy to move it, Andrew. Yeah.
Liz, do I have a seconder?
So through the chair. Sorry, Andrew. Can I just speak for a moment?
Yes, of course, Ken. Yep.
Yeah. Look, in view of the conversation that's just been had, which staff will definitely take those comments on board. I mean, you've quite clearly articulated that the trade-off there is the cost of this review. So we need to be mindful of the comments. We also need to be mindful of the financial costs. I was just going to suggest, perhaps before the motion is put, that B3 of the recommendation, that we perhaps just add the words, like it says at the moment, it says interactive sessions with both community boards, an interactive session with councillors, and interviews with selected staff. I'm going to suggest there that we just add on to that and other stakeholders. Because I think that would be a good acknowledgement of the the debate today, or the conversation today. So I just suggest before you put that there, if we add those words and like staff will be very mindful of that as we engage with prospective suppliers.
Yeah, thanks for Ken. I think that is actually a very good addition. But before, sorry,
through the chair, and so just to clarify as well, just in terms of the councillor involvement. I know some people have talked about that and some people have raised different issues. So where did that land?
Yes, well, I mean, there'd certainly be a stakeholder, no uncertain terms in my view, but Bronwyn, did you just have a comment on that?
Well, I was happy with the stakeholder comment, given that, as I say, there's a legislative obligation there with regards to the iwi. So I would imagine, don't want to be presumptuous, but I suppose I'm assuming then on that basis that that is a stakeholder.
Yeah, I would too. Thanks, Bronwyn. And before we go any further, Claire's got a hand up.
Thanks, Andrew. I just wanted some reassurance that the review is going to go ahead with the existing budget, but I didn't want it to, if it still wouldn't accommodate that wider perspective that we're hoping, or is needed for an effective review. So like Mike mentioned it before too, that we need to do this right. So, you're pressing ahead with this proposal, but is it still not going to have legs to do it? Because in the end, we really need a bit more budget. And if that was the case, I would be in favour of delaying it until there was adequate budget to do the job right, because it's an important review.
Yeah. So look, I mean, the thing is that is the question, and we now have a slightly amended recommendation that I take it, Liz. Sorry, Ken, before I carry on.
Look, sorry to interrupt again, Chair, but just addressing Claire's comment there. Look, to be fair and to be totally transparent about this, Joe and the team have not actually had any discussions at all with prospective suppliers at the moment. So in terms of the 25 to 30 hours of work that is mentioned in the paper, look, that is that's just a very raw estimate on the part of staff, and look, we're just not even sure that will cut it with suppliers, even on the scope as it existed before this meeting. So look, I guess what I just need to ask is that you give staff the opportunity to engage with suppliers. As I say again, we'll be mindful of the comments today. We'll be mindful of trying to broaden this out. This needs to be a good review. That 25 to 30 hours work is going to cost money. We need to make sure that's money well spent. But look, we may possibly have to look to find some additional money as it stands, let alone any expanded scope. We'll be mindful of that. Of course, if we run into problems in regard to that, we may need to come back for a discussion. But I'd suggest that the resolution as it stands at the moment, will enable us to have those initial conversations and kick off this review. I would hope.
Okay, thanks, Kim. So, personally, I'm reassured, but definitely the last person, Lou. Okay.
Thank you, Andrew. I just wanted to put one, I've listened to this with great interest. I'm very new on the community board. I just want to make one notification here that Cambridge and Te Awamutu and the Parongia committee are all quite disparate and would have to be reviewed individually, because we all serve different types of communities and have different impacts within that community. So it can't be one brush paints all. It's going to have to be individually viewed, as we have the community as different representatives, different types of venues and projects that they're operating under, and a different community they're serving. So I think we just have to be aware of that disparity between all three units.
Yes, thanks, Lou. And a good point, and I'm sure a reviewer will understand that the communities and personalities involved come to that are different. Yeah, so Ken.
Yes, so look, so through the chair, and just responding to that comment, Councillor Brown. Look, I think it's really important just to state that this is a review of the two community boards. So look, we would have some fairly major scope creep here if this was a review of the Parongia Ward Committee. So so very much the intent. I mean, in terms of the reviewer and what they do, yes, they may consider the makeup of the Parongia Ward Committee. They may consider what that committee has been doing, but look, just to be really, really clear and transparent here, this is about obtaining recommendations for the working or the future workings of the two community boards, the Cambridge and Te Awamutu and Kiki community boards.
Yeah, okay. So look, it's been well discussed. We've got a recommendation with interested stakeholders attached, or words to that effect. Personally, I'm happy for this to go ahead because we have this review being organised by our government's team who do know what they're doing and also want an effective result. But that's my personal view. So what your personal view will depend on the how you vote. So Liz, are you happy to move with the amendment? You are, okay.
Yes.
Mike's got his finger up.
No, I just want to make sure there's no conflict of interest here, and that's if some of us by chance we're going to be involved in this, we're not conflicted right here now, because at the moment we're not involved. Is that correct?
You're not involved at all. Your name has been mentioned, but you've not been elected or selected for anything, in my view.
So, yeah.
Okay, so do I have
happy to second that?
You're happy to second, Mike? Thank you.
Yep.
So, assuming that there's no further discussion, great. I will put the motion. Could I have hands up, please, to all in favour? Okay. Contrary, no. That is carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Joe. Well done. Okay, item 7. Financial report for a period ending 31 March. I see Nada's there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Nada.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Cool.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Financial results at the end of 31st of March. So currently the income's at 65% of the forecast and expenditure is at 67%. Recognised to date, we have 5.3 million of vested assets, sitting at 45% of the forecast. Capital expenditure to date is 66.8 million, being 46% of the forecast. The forecast budget for capital is 43.8 million. And with our rates, we have an amount outstanding from prior years of 95,000. And the balance, there is a balance outstanding of 512,000 for the current year. And with the water rates, we have an amount outstanding of 1.1 million. And currently there are prepayments of 116 9,000, leaving 946,000 owing. I'll take everything else as read, and if there's any questions.
Yes, questions, please. No, everyone's happy. I just wanted to, Ken was going to get you to have a quick look at why the community services and facilities actual operating revenue is so low.
Yeah. I had a quick look, Andrew, I didn't have much time, but just from what I saw, it's probably a lot of timing. So I noticed there's a bit of forestry income, which John says probably come in around June. And there's also quite a few external funding, so like the property sales, and there's a heritage external funding sitting in there as well. But I can look further into that for you if you like.
No, that's fine. If it's basically timing issues, I'm quite happy. Thanks for that, Nada. Ken, you've got your hand up.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. Look, in further to what Nada is saying, yes, look, I'm sure there is quite a few timing differences there. However, I suspect that there's also some permanent differences as well. So look, I think to be transparent, we need to mention that. Nada, in terms of the forestry, look, I think the prospects for that harvest revenue coming through and the current financial year are now fairly remote. That won't happen. So that will be well, I suppose it is a timing difference, but that will be shifted out to future years. It won't be caught up this year. Also mindful that there will be quite considerable dollars in relation to Mighty River Domain. And again, that is I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. I'll just turn that off. Mighty River Domain, obviously quite badly COVID affected there. So so that will be a permanent difference as well. So so there will be a mix. Some timing that will be caught up this year. Some much more permanent in nature.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Ken. All right. Well, if there's no further questions on the financial report, there is the recommendation on page 20. Could I have a mover, please? I'm going to put the hand up. Thanks, Philip, and thanks, Lou. All in favour? Contrary, no. That's carried. Great. Okay. Rates debt recovery, item 8. And is Kirsten about?
Chair, it's Yolanda that's actually going to
Yolanda's going
present
to
a report. Kirsten's on leave today. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Thanks, Yolanda.
So this report is basically just to inform the committee of the commencement of legal action for the recovery of fees from one ratepayer for 3 properties. It's been long outstanding and there's no mortgage to enable recovery. This is our very last resort to recover the funds. And the total amount outstanding for the 3 properties is $21,661.38. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Yolanda. Collecting this is going to make a big hole in our prior year's outstanding, actually, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, it's, as you say, quite straightforward. It's one rate payer, although 3 properties. Anyone have any comments or questions? No. Okay, so the recommendation on page 31, could I have a mover, please? Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Jim. All in favour? Contrary, no. That is carried. All right. Resolution to exclude the public. A mover, please. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Philip. All in favour?